Let's go kick this off. There's just so many things that has happened to Tesla. Elon Musk has been just saying things left, right, and center, lots of comments, lots of announcements. And we've got the powerhouse speakers on board here because each of them I brought on board to be able to speak to a very specific topic. Alexander Mertz, of course, is the leader of 10 million Tesla shareholders, retail shareholders. This vote is coming up on Thursday. And we've got her here. We've got Scott Walter here because just a few hours ago, Tesla kind of hinted in their post that there's now 2 humanoid bots, 2 Optimus already working in the Giga Texas. We can ask him about that. We've got Jeff Lutz here. Yesterday, Apple had a pretty big announcement announcing Apple Intelligence. And you saw what Elon did. He replied back pretty negatively. He was saying that very concerned about the privacy and security, specifically about how Apple is going to be partnering with OpenAI, and that he has a lot of questions about how you're going to send all of your personal private information to OpenAI. And then Elon then started saying multiple times in multiple different replies to posts, saying that he's suggesting that he might actually come up with a mobile phone. Jeff, of course, is somebody that has built mobile phones in the past very successfully for a number of very large companies. We'll have him weigh in on that. We've got Simon Hale here. He's a portfolio manager that's managing 300,000 Tesla shares for wealthy families. And we want to ask him what he thinks about what's coming up with the vote, how he's seeing how all of these other institutional investors, they've come out and started saying whether they're going to vote for or they're going to vote against. And we have Xander here as well. So he's the expert in short-term trading, and he can give us a sense of what he's thinking people are betting on what's going to happen. This particular Thursday, the vote is going to be pretty important because it's going to make, we're either going to go one way or we're going to go another way. So since we have Alexander here early, let's start with you, Alexander. Do you want to give us any update at all about the event, about anything you've heard recently?
Yes, couple of good news, couple of, I don't know yet. So the good news is we're getting our banner into the lobby. I'm very happy about that because we have this banner with the Mars Army saying, don't mess with Tesla retail shareholders. And I really think nobody should mess with us Tesla retail shareholders. And there's much more to come. I mean, this vote is the first step of us getting our power back. There is no company out there that has so many shareholders and that has such a large percentage of shareholders. And so we will lead the pack, like Tesla always leads the pack. Like Tesla may lead the pack as one of the big mega companies getting out of Delaware, and then you'll see many others who are going to follow. So the good news is we get that banner in. I want everybody that is going to be there able to sign it if they want to sign it, and I hope we can then just leave it there and it will stand there in that lobby for as long as it can stand. So I think that's a very cute idea. And I know Herbert is trying to cheat because he can't come, so he wants Jeff to sign for Herbert. So
please don't tell anybody.
I've seen that message. So you all arrange with people that are there whether they can sign for you. I don't know what you want to do, but anyway, so that's the good news. The I don't know news is obviously how these votes are gonna come out. And so I just want to launch a last 24 hours Hail Mary request to all of you. I know everybody thinks they have voted. I thought so too, until I opened a proxyvote.com account. And with the login that I use for most of my accounts in which I trade Tesla shares. And then a couple of hours later, it got auto-fed all the votes I'd done, and it also still had one of my Webull accounts that was not voted yet. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely sure I had voted all my shares. So I'm the best example of somebody who thought that she had voted with every share, and I did not. So please, everybody, take the 5 to 10 minutes it takes to set up a proxyvote.com account or to go back onto your brokers and check whether really for each and every account you've voted, because it's not because you voted for one account that every account is voted. You really have to physically vote for each account separately. So I do believe that's going to make the difference, and that's going to carry us over the line. And I really hope that is going to happen.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexandra. Yeah, I think the leading account would be GameStop, right? Because I've heard that they have 50 million retail shareholders. That, although they are very much a meme stock, of course. But Sander, tell us what you're thinking about what might happen this Thursday.
Yeah, I was also going to suggest that, like, call your parents or friends or anyone that may not be in the loop. That's something I want to do for myself, is double check that my parents voted. Um, but for Thursday, I mean, I'm quite optimistic, and I'm positioning myself in that manner. I just don't see how how it's good for shareholders to not vote in favor of Elon's getting his comp package. As for the move to Texas, I think that is, I'm not hopeful on that. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. The options market is pricing in. I imagine a lot of people are buying insurance. So in terms of open interest, the premium is a little higher to the downside than it is to the upside. But that is logical. That if you're holding your shares, you're going to want to buy some insurance. So that's kind of what's going on.
Thanks, Sander. Alexandra, you saw that Elon said roughly 90% of retail shareholders who have voted in favor of both resolutions. The public sentiment is unequivocally supportive. Obviously, this, you can't read too much into this in terms of what we think that the vote's going to come out to be, but based on everything, all the other actions you've seen, are you confident that maybe that's what they're indicating, that retail has stood up and this might turn the table?
The 90% doesn't tell me anything. I mean, I'm very happy that we have such, hands-on and very motivated and very enthusiastic retail base that is standing behind Tesla, Tesla's board, and of course Elon and the mission. So that is wonderful. I mean, that's why I say, who else can count on such? I mean, maybe as you say, some GameStop, but not any mega cap can count on such a motivated retail shareholder base. The problem obviously is 90% of how many. So we don't know how many retail investors were able to vote. I do hope that our efforts brought out about at least 100 million more shares. I think that is not too optimistic. So these were people who could never vote before but could vote now. We need $1.1 billion to complement the 413 million that Elon and Kimball have to get to the 50% on the Texas vote. So it's going to be a stretch. But I mean, I always have this little hope still that lots of the institutions actually would like for Tesla to fight this fight out of Delaware, right? Because there are many other people who want to leave Delaware, but they need one of the big ones to fight this through. And I think lots of people strategically think, well, may as well be Elon. He'll get all the attention. He'll have all these lawyers going for it, and then for them it's becoming easier afterwards. I haven't given up hope. So on the compensation package, I'm still optimistically thinking we'll have 60% plus. And on the Texas vote, it's going to be very sharp, but it could be over 50%.
Okay, thank you. Simon, you want to jump in as a portfolio manager? I know you said that you'd voted all 300,000 Tesla shares that you have under your purview for a 4. What have you been hearing, and how are you feeling about this vote?
Well, it was more a question towards Alexandra because she's so involved with this. I was curious that if you look at the large institutional shareholders, the biggest is obviously BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, but these are mostly either passive or holding them in mutual funds. And normally, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me, when they own large chunks of these companies, which like Vanguard owns the largest chunk of almost every company in the world, just through their ETFs, they usually vote in favor. They just simply vote in favor of what the board is recommending. And of course, pension funds, they generally what we're seeing is virtue signaling, and whoever's controlling the pension, whatnot. Am I mistaken there, Alexandra?
Yeah, unfortunately you are. State Street and Vanguard are very much ESG banner carriers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they vote against. Now, the good thing is, about 2 years ago, the SEC changed their requirements. All these people have to publish once a year how they vote. So we will know how they voted. We'll know that by August 31st, which is the annual day they have to always submit their proxy votes for any company, but obviously also for Tesla. So we'll know that. And I do believe, it's not that we're threatening them, but I think they understood very clearly that somebody who has a Vanguard S&P 500 fund can very well move it to Fidelity or move it to somebody else or to BlackRock. I do believe the fact that Elon followed the CFO of BlackRock gives us a good indication that BlackRock probably signaled to them that they are signing up for it. T. Rowe obviously was already in the proxy, saying it very clearly that they are for it. So it will be a split between all these. I mean, we have 4,000 institutionals in there. Some of them are small, but obviously lots of them are big. We know that the Norwegian sovereign pension fund is going to vote against. We know that Carl Pers and Carl, whatever it's called, the other one, is going to vote against. So it's going to be a nail biter for Texas. Like I said again, for the compensation package, I think not. Remember, in 2018, we actually had more institutions. We also had Glass Lewis and ISS saying they were against the compensation package. And nevertheless, we had 70% institutions. If they would have all followed Glass Lewis and ISS, then we would have obviously never won that vote. And we did win it by 73% of the casted votes. And that is the basket for that part. So I don't see us losing that. That would be really a disappointment if we lose the compensation package on Thursday. Go ahead, Simon. Ask the rest.
No, that's interesting. Thank you for that. I was curious, and instead of doing the work, I thought I would just reach out to you and ask the facts. I do think it's. I don't know. I was speaking to my wife this evening before coming on the call, and I said, I've never seen anything like this. There's no, you don't have people getting together and chatting every night about Apple or NVIDIA or Microsoft, for that matter, and going out to these meetups. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And in my 20 plus years in the industry, I think it's phenomenal. I don't think the press is doing a very good job of telling the story of the retail investor. I think I've talked about that on X, and the fact that over 40% of the Tesla shareholders are retail investors, and they don't seem to be getting the same kind of airtime on the mainstream media. I think it should be talked about. I think it's a story for the ages.
I agree and disagree. So the thing is a little bit that Tesla doesn't have PR, right? So when these people write articles, who do they reach out to? I mean, some of them reach out to Sawyer or to Omar, and to me now. But it's obviously we're not organized in that way, and maybe we should get more organized in that way, because they want to listen to us. So I have had a couple of conversations this week with Ross Gerber, with K, not Gerber, like Ross Gerber, and he has written some quite nasty articles. I mean, nasty is not the right word, but quite critical articles on Tesla. But he was obviously begging for good conversation. So I took the time and spoke twice an hour on it, and 2 very good articles came out of it. And I mean, obviously, they're always saying, oh, there is Elon fangirl, Tesla boomer mama, and they make fun of my name, which, I mean, it's too late to change it now. And honestly, I think I should just carry it now. But it, other than my persona, was not important in this whole story. It brings the story finally out there. And he already convened that that Thursday after the meeting, he wants to talk to me again. He now wants a quote on what I think would happen if the vote doesn't go through. So they are writing stories about it. There was, there was Bloomberg story with us in it. It's slowly going through, and it comes obviously from the fact that we're all vaccinated against the media, right? So if you don't work with these people a little bit, that has been part of my job for 10 years when I was in the rating agencies. If you don't work with them, not that I appreciate a lot about the press, don't get me wrong, but if you want to get better press, if you want to get more awareness that the retail shareholders are so massively for this and for Elon and for Tesla and for the mission and for the board, well, you have to walk towards them. They're not gonna just come to you and be nice with you. That's not the way this works. And so he did write 2 very fair articles. I quoted one today on the Scandinavian situation, and Elon said, oh, that's cool. So obviously, that gave a little bit of water on that journalist's mill, and that's great. We have to sort of break that resistance, and it's been tough for the journalists. I'm not going to complain about them or help them in more ways than necessary, but it's tough for journalists if you can never reach out to these companies, and they feel that they're just snubbed, and that the Tesla side is very arrogant.
Probably a silly question, and I thought about this many times. Why doesn't Tesla have one person they pay whatever $100,000 per year to be basically their public relations?
I don't know. I tried to fight that fight 2 years ago. I think they were so disappointed with the press for so many years that it was just better to clean the whole slate. But Sat probably knows. He's been there for a longer time.
Thanks. Thanks, Alexandra. Yeah, it's Tesla did employ a PR department before in the earlier days. What that created was basically the media would always take it the negative way. So no matter how much explanation was coming out from the PR department, they would spin it the negative way, and it would keep the negative story in the front headlines. So it actually made it worse. So, and then the way that resolved was Elon came out to an interview with one-on-one with a reporter, and then basically explained it, or at a conference and had an interview and had to go through the steps of what the actual story was. And the story that I always remember is the story of the Model S. And the whole front headlines is saying, oh, the battery exploded, and then the battery has an issue, it was a fire. But the guy was going over the speed limit. He went over a hill, crashed into a wall, into a tree, and it burst in flames, and he walked away from the accident. And the only thing they write is it's a battery fire. So no matter how much PR that there is, they're not going to try to be honest about the situation or even say, oh, we made a mistake, retract it. They won't even retract it. They just keep on fueling the fire. So Elon got fed up with it. And I don't think people realize Elon's way more tame now than he was back then. So when people are emotional about Elon's responses or certain things that he says or even doesn't say, he's actually much more tame now. If you were in the earlier days, he literally was like straight up calling people names because it was a small company. He had to defend the company. So the media has still relentlessly done it. It's just harder for the media when you have consecutive quarters for 2-3 years now of profits and record deliveries and so forth. It's really hard to say that, oh, the Tesla Qs are correct now. So now that they're trying to smear him with different ways, and the tactics is becoming much more I would say kind of sneaky, but but the thing is, like, our retail base is much bigger, and we have a bigger voice for that.
Okay, good. Well, since we have Jeff here, can we talk about the Apple event that happened yesterday? Apple announced Apple Intelligence, and it includes a partnership with OpenAI. Elon threatened to ban Apple devices from his companies if Apple integrates OpenAI's technology into its operating system. And then he said a few times that it's not out of the question for him to create a mobile phone for himself. So Jeff, this event that's happening, is he setting up a fight with Apple? Obviously with Microsoft, tremendous partnership with OpenAI. Now with Apple, with that trifecta, this is a real threat to XAI. It's a threat maybe to Tesla, but it's also an opportunity for this phone. What was your thoughts on all this?
Hey, Edward, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had a number of thoughts on the topic, and I do have a background in honestly designing how the modern smartphone is manufactured today. And I'm actually on site with a client talking through some of this. And what's interesting is when I saw this yesterday, my first response was, well, do we understand the system design and like what's actually happening? Because, to say like, I'm a little bit in not disagreement, but it's more of like, I think there's more there's more data. And you can say like you don't need the data, it's obviously going to go in this one direction or another. But if that's the case, if that's the route you want to take, of like if they're partner, if there's any app interaction, that they're going to be passing data along, well, then you have to have that same conversation about the other operating system and platform that's out there as well. So I don't know how you just have it about one and not the other. Would be my first bit of feedback. So my recommendation would be like, okay, people, take a moment and let's understand. Maybe have a design review, a system design review, and understand what information is being passed back and forth, how it's actually occurring. Because again, I think the implications are much broader than iOS. So that was my first bit of feedback, and I think a little bit of time to understand the system design is warranted. The second thing is, okay, if you were going to go in this mode of developing a phone, first off, in the pantheon of things, so first off, the mobile phone market's gigantic. It's anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 billion units per year. There's a lot of margin to be made, especially in the higher tier, where about 300 or 400 million of those devices are made. So it's if you want to get brand and name recognition, everybody has one of these rectangles in their pocket, if you think about it. But I don't know if it would be a good use. And of all the different companies he has, I would actually think that Starlink would be the one that would be, to me, most closest to kind of manage this. It'd be kind of the tip of the spear. Now, it may need to bring in other components of his other teams and other groups, the metallurgy team, for example, materials team, the antenna teams, the things like that from some of the other groups. But I would think that if you think about the miniaturization involved in the smallest thing that Tesla makes today, I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, the smallest thing that they make in volume are the Starlink terminals for consumers. So you would want to step down from there to build something like this, and it is very difficult. If you were to like cut your phone in half and look inside, it is really densely populated in terms of how these are made. But I mean, could it be done? Absolutely. A couple of things I would keep in mind. I would, you've got interesting design language, with the Cybertruck. I have experience in the past of doing a completely extruded phone out of a block of aluminum, and I can share examples of this on Act. We did put it in a production, but yeah, there's that design language. The whole material story, I think, is out there. Would you have Starlink connectivity? I think you would. So I think you have to think about like, what are the features on this thing that would make it stand out and make people actually want to switch. That's the thing. Like, are you scaring people out of one platform for a security concern that that may exist on multiple platforms? Like, how are you going to get switchers? You have a bunch of things to think through: the app store, the operating system. Then you have to think about what are the implications to the app in the iOS store today. So, I mean, you've got probably 75% of Tesla owners that are, that use their app to drive, to get in and lock their vehicle every day. So I think you want to be careful, because for any reason they could yank that app or put it under review for some various reason or limit it. I think it's time to like take a step back and review options, and not just go like blazing trails in one direction. Because again, you've got, if it's a concern with one operating system, it's probably a concern with the other one. Finally, just some things I would think about. I do like, from a design language perspective, Tesla definitely has something with the cyber design language perspective, so it's probably something that they would want to consider. Could it actually convert itself and be a Starlink terminal? That's another thing to think about. Like, is this the next evolution of a terminal where you can actually miniaturize it to the point where it fits in your pocket, or it has some limited connectivity and capability for direct satellite connectivity. Power management battery, I mean, they have tremendous expertise. You need to do that at a whole new level, in a smartphone, just given the confines of the design. The final thing I would challenge this team to look at would be like doing something that's just totally outside of the industry norm. Like, could you make an unbreakable, phone design? Could you think about diamond-like coatings on plastic so they don't break or crack? And could that be the cover screen where it doesn't scratch? And so there's some interesting things that have been plaguing this industry forever. All 1.5 billion phones sold today, if you drop it without a case, you have a high likelihood of cracking it. So are there things that the Tesla team could uniquely go after that no one else has solved? So yeah, it's interesting debate. I'll
Thank
open
you
it up.
so much, Jeff. Yeah, I've got so many questions to ask you, but yeah, you would be such a perfect person if Elon is forced to do this. Now, 6 months ago, when Elon was at the Deal Summit on New York Times, he was asked about a phone, and he was really saying no, but he said, if there's an essential need to make a phone, I'll make a phone. And then today, Warren Redlick, he's here at speaker board right now. He goes, I'm calling it now. X will partner with Samsung to manufacture an X phone. It will look better than any of these that he hacked together. XOS will be open source to assure user privacy is protected. The phone will be optimized for X app. It will seamlessly integrate with Tesla cars, robotaxis, Optimus bots, Boring Company, Neuralink. Direct connection to Starlink will be included, but not as useful as most. Small chance Starlink starts acquiring third-tier cell phone companies. And then Elon Musk replied to you, Warren, and he said, it's not out of the question. Warren. Oh, gosh. Warren.
If Herbert's,
There you are.
I apparently can't hear Herbert. Is other people hear Herbert? All right, I'm going to quit the app. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay, Scott, did you have your hands raised?
Yeah, I've got a question for Jeff. If Elon called, would you say yes?
I mean, I don't know. It depends. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to think through it. There's plenty of people, by the way. Well, I mean, this would be a fairly unique product and approach, knowing what they would try to do. But I think I don't think this is a talent question. I mean, I think there is some unique talent that's needed, but I think they have a lot of it now. I mean, when you do one of these, this is the difference. Like when you're a company like, Samsung, or you name the other company, and you add one more phone on top of the 10 that you do a year, that's one thing. But when you want to go from 0 to 1, it's a gigantic undertaking. You have to think about everything. You have to think about your test facilities. You have to think about, your operating system. You have to think about your field testing. You have to think about everything. So the partnership thing, getting back to Warren's point, is interesting. I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to do it at the OEM level. I think Tesla or Starlink could still be the OEM, but if you look at it as a percent bill of material content, or in cost, or in part numbers, Samsung is in a lot of the major devices you say, whether it says Samsung on the outside of the device or not. They have the memory, they have the display. In some cases, they're doing the actual both the modem side and the CPU side with Exynos. So they have a tremendous amount of capability. It's beyond just them at the OEM level. It's really what's under the surface. So they would be an interesting partner. But again, when you do something like that, you're splitting margins off. You're splitting a number of things off, and they don't have a track record of going after really, really unique design. They're more evolutionary than revolutionary, I would say. So there would be pros and cons of that, but certainly you would go to them for these building blocks around the display, maybe for memory. They would be a core of the phone for sure.
How serious is this? Because I do not want Tesla. I'm thinking about Tesla. What does it mean when we're now fighting OpenAI and Microsoft and now Apple? we've got to have Apple on our side.
Well, I think if Elon is reading ahead and he thinks that, remember forever, these different operating systems have all been around their app store and then around pointing to some sort of thing that they can monetize. So if the thing now that can be monetized is the access to superhuman intelligence, and now the portals are through, OpenAI, Gemini, or Grok. Well, I think there is some logic then to him, his empire looking at, building one of these things, because there's no end in sight, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, of people, buying these rectangles for $1,200 a year, basically, at least in the premium side, and having them. There's no plan. There's no end in sight. There's no like. There was a thought like, oh, this is going to move to the face. It's going to move to above the eye. That's not going to happen in whole. So yeah. There's a little bit more logic to this now than there may have been a year ago. Put it that way.
Yeah, Jeff, can you? Warren's back. Can you set him up and tell him that I just read his tweet and have him answer it?
Yeah, Warren. I was just saying.
Actually, I heard you. I did hear Herbert. So I want to address a couple of points. First of all, going back to Alexandra's point about journalists, we've dealt with this journalist problem for a long time. And yes, you'll find an occasional journalist, but the idea that they can't find us, that there's no Tesla PR department. So
Yeah, I can't hear him anymore.
yeah, it's that. Oh my God.
You're going in and out, Warren. In the meantime, why don't we go to Adrian? You had your hands up for a while.
Kind of on the smartphone side, that's actually really interesting points. I don't think you'd need something that's too abstract, mainly just operating system based. And I think Samsung would be really good for that. And in general, I think Android, maybe you could optimize that and you'd not lose something like the App Store, or in this case, the Play Store, if you call it like that. Because I primarily use Android and I've been very satisfied with it. I've had an iOS device at some point. Those things are not only from a software perspective, but also from a hardware perspective, really, really cumbersome to utilize, especially when it comes to, like, say, running the X app, for instance. The thing just basically overheats constantly, and it becomes more of a challenge to keep the phone from exploding than it does to actually keep everything else managed well. So it's really annoying to run Spaces or anything on an Apple device. Games, for instance, they do tend to work well, but then again, overheating is an issue. For the operating system itself, I think Android is better because you can just, you can customize it more, which is probably exactly what Tesla would want to, or XAI, or whoever is going to partner with this in whatever official capacity. It's something that they would probably want to look into. As for the hardware side of things, I mean, for instance, Samsung has a history of using various interesting types of materials to make their phones better. So for instance, the one that I'm using right now, I've actually used it as a demonstration device multiple times because I always get in these, heated debates with people about which phones are better from any perspective. And it was like, oh, the hardware is better. I'm like, really? And I would always take this phone, and I've done this like probably 50 times or so up until this point, and I would drop it on some surface anywhere. It doesn't really matter. I would just drop it just like that. Hold it up to about, I think, 5 or 6 feet high, let it drop, pick it up, like, I want to see you do that with your phone. So honestly, these things are very stable. Internal wise, it's like not just the external things that are damaged, it's also the internals. And like, who knows what they would want for customization internally. So I don't know, man. I think for something like an X phone, something that's highly customized, they'd probably want to go for Samsung. I wonder if ROG could be a alternative as well, given that their phones are really, really, really fast. They're really good. They're gaming phones, so that's something. And it's actually kind of funny because one of the ROGs actually has a thing that's called X mode, where the phone itself is actually accelerated. It's kind of cool. Just a little funny side aspect.
But isn't one problem with Android the fact that it's Google?
Yes, that is in fact an issue. Because they'd have Gemini in there somewhere, but I'm pretty sure you could like restrict that somehow. Because again, this is very customizable. I've seen people take something like a Google Pixel and take everything that's Google out of it, which is the most ironic thing ever. It's like, I'm going to create a phone that's literally the personification of irony, and I'm going to remove all of the things that are Google and anything else that transmits information that I don't want to have transmit information. It's really like it's quite modular. It's kind of cool. You can do a lot of things with Android. You can control it in many different ways. It's like basically, it's its greatest advantage and its greatest weakness as well. But the same also goes for Apple. It's very difficult to customize anything on the OS level. So like even when it comes to attacks, it's very difficult for the user to respond or do anything about, shutting off vectors of attack. But I mean, that's just me.
Like I said, I think everything's going back to it was a kind of an App Store OS thing, and now it's probably being promoted up to an LLM thing. And so, Android's got theirs, iOS has theirs, and I don't think that they're going to want to get away from it. I think they're going to want to put that everywhere that their OS is. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to think. You can negotiate anything. It's all a question of what are people willing to do. But yeah,
I think we lost you, Jeff.
I mean, we were just posting about the other.
We need more Starlink satellites for sure.
Yeah, and I want to ask Jeff that question again. I didn't like the answer. If Elon calls Jeff, do you say yes?
These, LLMs are maybe more dictating the overall operating system and the overall usage of the device. It may be kind of like this, almost like this one button or no button experience, right? And all you do is this thing is kind of all knowing of you. And all you do is talk to it and say, hey, I want to pull up the Hertz app. I want to do this or that. There's no more opening up and hunting and pecking for things. So I think there's an opportunity to disrupt. All I'll say is to go from 0 to 1 is a tremendous commitment and a tremendous amount of work. And you don't have a smash hit like usually in the first generation. My experience with these things, it takes you, 3, 4, 5, generations to really build up that user base. So these are some of the things to think through.
There's also a bit of a problem because if you look at any of the technologies that Elon's primarily focused in, it's stuff that seems to work together with the other companies, right? So you have to ask yourself, okay, which of the technologies that are currently being manufactured can actually contribute to something like the phone? You know what I mean? Okay, perhaps from the steel perspective, okay, now you can armor your phone, but what about the compute perspective? They don't make chips that small, as far as I can tell. I don't know. You'd have to still rely on something that you'd customize perhaps via something like TSMC, which is basically doing all the compute customization, which is also how NVIDIA became successful. But it's very difficult, and especially like what you said with the production aspect of things, is also the reason why there was a chip shortage, right? Where you actually have to ramp things down and ramp them back up again. Imagine what would have to happen if you started things from scratch. And then again, how is that going to intersect with any of the other companies that already exist? I don't really see much of that. Perhaps the compute aspect, yeah, sure. Making it difficult to destroy, perhaps as well. But it seems, it seems there's some intersectionality, but it doesn't seem like there is much, which is probably also the reason why he said he wouldn't want to do it unless it's a necessity. And I like the thing that you said about localized LLMs as well. I think that would be something really cool, where basically you'd have your own assistant. This is kind of something that multiple companies have already tried to tackle. Something like the Rabbit R1 was supposed to do exactly that, right? But it just turned out basically being a weirdly shaped device that runs on Android or whatever, and just has, API towards like whatever AI that we're using, which is probably just ChatGPT. Really, really weird situation. But if you actually had the ability to run things locally, that would be kind of cool. And I think Grok could actually do that with XAI. That could be possible. Yeah, it's just the compute needs to be better, like much, much better.
Simon, did you have your hands up?
Sure, yeah. Just to comment, Herbert, you were asking about the conflict between Apple and potential conflict between Apple and Tesla. I thought I'd give my take on it. And out of full disclosure, we own a very large position in our portfolios in Apple, and we've owned it for over 10 years. So we are long the stock. I read the post yesterday. I didn't have time to watch the presentation immediately, but I read the post from Elon, and my first take was something's amiss here, because I know that Cook and Elon aren't really at odds right now. It seems like they made up their tiff after the whole X incident. And I thought, what am I misreading? I went home and watched the presentation last night. I watched it again this morning. And then I went into work and was impressed, talked to my brother, my partner, about these. He has a background in computer science. And he actually pointed out something that he says, no, he says, Elon didn't say that he's going to ban phones from all, Tesla factories. He said, if they integrate the OS system with Chat GTP, then that's what they'll do. But Apple was very clear in saying that they would, if you decided to ask a question outside of their ecosystem, we'll give you the option, and you can send that one question to the chatbot system. So they were still protecting the data. And so I watched the video twice, and that was kind of my take on it. And so I agree with him. And I don't think Apple would ever integrate GPT-4 OpenAI into their OS. Like, that would be nuts. So that was our take on it. That I thought, everybody's really, they're concerned over nothing here. I don't think that Apple would ever do that. But Elon was just very clear that if it was ever integrated with their OS.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, there's a whole conversation between Marcus Brownlee, who talked directly to Tim Cook, and apparently Tim Cook said Apple has at no point sends any of your data to OpenAI without explicit user permission. But Elon replied to that, with a joke, South Park joke, basically, saying it's so easy to agree by accident. Once you start using something, you don't even know what you agreed to, and then your data is being sent. So I get what you're saying, Simon. I hope you're right, but obviously Elon knows a lot more than we do. There's a lot of back discussions they're probably having, and this is where I get, my feelers up, going, maybe Elon wanted XAI and Grok to be a partnership with Apple, and instead Apple chose OpenAI for now, right? Because I think they also said that if they're in China, they might be able to use Baidu instead, that you can swap out OpenAI just like they can swap out Google Maps. I just am thinking about Tesla and what's happening specifically at this very important moment in time. And here's Elon seemingly picking a fight. And again, I'm not saying he picked the fight. It might have been, happening ahead of time. And you can sort of, like, if you piece the breadcrumbs together, 6 months ago when he was at DealBook, he already said, right, if I was forced to, if it was a necessity, you kind of already seen that he's thinking about these things. If this happens, I would do this. So I have no doubt in my mind he might have already started movement, or started exploring it, if anything, just in his own mind. What would he do if? And now it looks like that OpenAI and Microsoft and Apple have now partnered together. So yeah, it's a big deal. Go ahead, Alexandra. Oh, go ahead, Adrian, or whichever.
Yeah,
Jump in.
it's a bit of an issue with actually, but all those companies, but especially with Microsoft, you can see when he was setting up, I think, his new PC, he already had an issue with that, basically saying, oh, you can't actually use this thing unless you have something like a Microsoft account. And if you actually look into what exactly Microsoft is gathering from you, if you have an actual Microsoft account, it's fucking insane. Personally, I don't use Microsoft accounts on anything that I use because of the amount of data that just comes out. You're just basically being farmed. There's nothing much that you can actually do about it. Sure, of course, you can opt out of some things, but it's interesting. You can actually tell where the interests align for any company because it is actually when you look at any kind of user interface, it is designed to make the process of agreeing to certain things as confusing as humanly possible. So you just end up saying agree all, and then you're just getting farmed. So there's some really interesting practices that are happening under the hood. If you look at Windows itself, there's some stuff, for instance, where every single update after, say, Windows 8 has added things and removed things where I ask myself, the freedom of the user to do things to their own computer via this operating system has been drastically restricted in recent times. Honestly, Microsoft is, and especially Windows itself as an operating system, is next level disappointing. And like you've seen, so many people are downgrading from 11 to 10 for various reasons. Can you imagine what's going to happen in the next version? A lot of people are considering to use Linux, which is not even like well optimized. Sure, it's a very good operating system, of course. It has a few struggles. I think it's like basically the Android of the the Android of all operating systems, if you think about it this way, which is ironically has some truth to that. But if you think about it more, this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of dissatisfaction with a lot of these companies, and especially now. I think this is kind of the last straw. That's why he's always been thinking about it.
Sorry, it took me time to get my mic working. I just wanted to tell you I'm going to leave this wonderful discussion because I don't think I can contribute a lot, and there's still a lot to be done on my side. So I just want to wish everybody a good trip to Austin for those that are coming, and for everybody else, watch us please on Thursday afternoon. Vote, check your votes, and if there are any last questions, I can of course stay around. But other than that, I'll be gone in the next couple of minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Giant thank you to you. That post that I sent out there has 150,000 or something like that, 130,000.
Oh, that was so sweet. Thank you, Herbert. That was just
no, but it
sweet.
shows you that there's so many people that are very thankful for all the work you're doing. Appreciate you. And thank you for going down there. And you'll dial back in with us and update us live with you and Jeff when you're there. And Xander? I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.